The thing that exposed my wife's double life was not a lipstick stain, a hotel receipt, or some careless midnight text. It was a blinking red dot on my home network map at 11:43 on a Sunday night, while I was standing barefoot in my office trying to figure out why the guest room mesh node kept dropping packets. That was the first time I saw the device called Meridian 5G. It did not belong in my house. I was the CIO of a company large enough that people used words like ecosystem and footprint when they wanted to sound important, which meant I spent most of my life thinking about what should and should not be connected, who should and should not have access, and how betrayal almost always entered quietly, disguised as convenience. My name is Bob Marino. I was 40 then. My wife Janice was 38, beautiful in the polished, social climber way that made rooms tilt toward her without realizing they had moved. We had been married 14 years in Silicon Valley, and from the outside, we were one of those admired couples people assumed had figured out the formula. She chaired charity committees, hosted founders, wives' lunches, and ran the public face of a museum tech philanthropy initiative that existed mostly so wealthy people could be photographed looking civic. I wore dark suits, flew too much, and kept companies from bleeding secrets through bad architecture and worse human judgment. Together we looked expensive, composed, and envied. Inside the house, that blinking red dot said otherwise. Before I tell you how a home network anomaly led me to a hotel parking lot, a second man, and a legal nightmare bigger than infidelity, subscribe to Reddit Ride. Stories like this are never really about cheating alone. They are about the moment a quiet man realizes he has been underwriting his own humiliation. Meridian 5G was a mobile hotspot, hidden SSID, rotating MAC address, consumer-grade camouflage wrapped around lazy tradecraft. The kind of device people use when they want a second pipe, separate from the house, separate from routine logs, separate from questions. It had appeared on my network map 6 times in 3 weeks, always late, always for less than 10 minutes, always near the garage side access point. That should not have been enough to make my pulse move. It did anyway. I clicked deeper. The hotspot had one regular companion device, Janice's iPad. That was when the room changed. I did not accuse. I did not wake her. I did not do what sloppy men do when adrenaline outruns evidence. I exported the logs, copied the device fingerprints, and went upstairs. Janice was asleep on her side, one arm under the pillow, hair loose across the sheet, face soft with the kind of peace only liars seem able to keep in the first half of betrayal. I stood there in the dark and watched her breathe, and wondered how long a double life takes before it stops feeling double to the person living it. The next morning, she kissed my cheek over coffee and asked whether I'd be home in time for dinner Thursday. That was the cruelty of it. The ordinary grace. The warm voice over porcelain cups. The little domestic touches that keep a marriage looking admired, while something rotten moves behind the walls. Probably late, I said. Board prep, she nodded sympathetically. I've got the Peninsula Arts dinner anyway. Her phone lit up on the counter. She flipped it face down without looking. I noticed that too. For 3 days I said nothing. I watched. I repaired the guest room node. I went to meetings. I listened to our chief legal officer worry about foreign diligence on a quiet acquisition we had not yet announced to the market. I came home and noticed that Janice took her phone to the patio now, and to the laundry room, and once into the pantry just to answer a quick museum question. I noticed that the Meridian 5G hotspot appeared only on nights when she claimed to be doing event planning, and that each appearance came within an hour of her returning home. On Thursday, I checked the car app. Our housekeeper had once joked that our SUV knew more about our marriage than our priest did. She was probably right. The app showed parking locations, arrival times, idle time, door access, the whole smug little stream of modern convenience. Janice had parked that week not only at museums and committee lunches, but twice at a boutique hotel off Sand Hill Road called the Meridian House. Meridian. Of course, the hotspot was named after the hotel. I sat back in my desk chair and stared at the screen until the logic lined up all at once. She was not just meeting someone. She was bringing a second network home from the hotel, probably in a purse or tote, probably to sync messages or files away from her primary carrier trail. Sloppy in a clever person's way. Smart enough to hide the channel. Not smart enough to marry someone who understood systems better than she understood impulse. The first physical object came 2 nights later. Janice had gone upstairs to change for a founder dinner. I was looking for a lighter in the kitchen drawer when I saw her silver clutch on the island, slightly unzipped. Inside was a black key sleeve, embossed with the Meridian house crest. Folded into it was a brass valet token, and a cream card with a room number written in blue ink. 1714. Nothing else. No name. No explanation. Just enough. I put it back exactly where I found it. When she came down, she looked immaculate. Black dress, gold earrings, soft lipstick, that composed half-smile she used when she wanted a room to accept her before it had a reason to. She looked like a woman heading toward applause. "Do I look all right?" she asked. "You look perfect," I said. That was true, and for the first time in 14 years, truth tasted like acid in my mouth. I followed her, not because I am dramatic, because I am patient. She drove to a restaurant in Menlo Park, parked, went inside, stayed 40 minutes, and then left through a side exit with a man I recognized from somewhere I could not place at first. Mid-30s, good coat, expensive hair, the bright, smug body language of men who confuse appetite with status. He walked close. She laughed up at him with a softness she had not aimed at me in longer than I wanted to calculate. They got into a black sedan together and drove back to the Meridian house. I stayed across the street long enough to watch them disappear into the hotel. Then I went home and pulled every thread I had. His name was Preston Vale. That came from Janice's sync tablet, not from her phone. The tablet was a gift from me 2 anniversaries earlier, logged into the household cloud she barely understood. Not messages, not directly, but calendar bleed, contacts bleed app residue. Preston Vale was saved under a woman's first name and a florist's last name. Amateur work, the kind people think is clever because nobody around them has yet decided to look. He was not a venture titan. He was worse. Preston ran strategic relationship development for a boutique capital network that sounded legitimate until you realized all its media was selfies, panel clips, and rented credibility. He was exactly the kind of man Valley people laugh at in private, while still inviting him to public events, because he knows how to flatter money without embarrassing it too quickly. And Janice could not say no to him. That part took shape from the messages I eventually found cached in a hotel webmail portal she forgot to log out of on her iPad. He asked. She rearranged. He wanted a different hotel. She switched it. He wanted introductions. She made them. He wanted information that was probably nothing, just directional. She gave him that too. At first it was social. Guest lists. Which spouse would be where? Which partner was quietly leaving which firm? Which deal room was tense? The kind of soft intelligence ambitious parasites collect because it helps them sound connected. Then it got uglier. One email from Janice to Preston had a forwarded note I had sent her months earlier about a charity date conflict caused by an internal executive offsite. Harmless on its face, except the offsite location was one of the sites under consideration for our confidential acquisition target. Another exchange mentioned my awful board week and the fact that if Bob survives Thursday, your people will know by Friday where the votes are. She had not sent deck files. She had not dumped a data room. But she had done what careless, needy people do when they want to impress someone who keeps demanding more. She had let private corporate timing leak through her fingers because it made her feel powerful to know it. That was the moment the betrayal stopped being marital. It became legal. I called our chief legal officer from my driveway the next morning. "I need outside counsel on a personal matter that may brush corporate confidentiality," I said. There was silence. Then, in the flat voice smart lawyers use when they sense real risk, he said, "How immediate?" Immediate enough that I'm not discussing it on a recorded line. By noon, I was in a conference room with outside counsel, our head of internal security, and a forensic analyst who looked 25 and deadly. I gave them only what mattered. The hotspot, the location trail, the hotel, The partial correspondence, the references to timing, board votes, off-site movement. I told them my wife was involved with a man named Preston Vale, and that I did not yet know how much of my life had become his supply chain. No one overreacted. That was the worst part. Professionals do not gasp. They classify. They put legal hold notices in motion. They start quiet metadata reviews. They isolate devices and access assumptions. They make the catastrophe feel organized. By Monday, they knew more. Preston had traded around 3 companies whose names had floated near our strategic planning environment, not directly enough to prove a simple line, but close enough to make people who bill by the hour sit straighter. Janice had also been forwarding calendar screenshots to a private Proton account connected to the Meridian hotspot. Not daily, not in bulk, just enough. Quiet cumulative betrayal. The most dangerous kind. My attorney handled the marriage side. Corporate counsel handled the rest. I handled Janice by saying almost nothing at all. That week she tried harder with me. Brought wine home. Suggested we finally book Tuscany in the fall. Touched my back when she passed behind my chair. Once, standing in the kitchen with evening light turning the glass cabinets gold, she said, "I miss us." I looked at her and thought, "You miss your cover." But all I said was, "I've been busy." The middle blow arrived Wednesday night. I found a photo on the sync tablet from 11 months earlier. Janice and Preston at a hotel rooftop in San Francisco, shoulder to shoulder. Her face turned toward him with the same private softness I had watched from across the street. 11 months. Longer than I expected. Long enough that entire seasons of my marriage had been sharing air with this thing. Long enough that holidays, anniversaries, donor dinners, and lazy Sunday breakfasts all had a ghost sitting at the table with us. That hurt more than the hotel. It hurt more than the legal exposure, even. Because duration is disrespect made measurable. The confrontation had to be planned. Not because I wanted theater. Because Janice had spent 14 years learning how to steer rooms. She knew exactly when to cry, when to soften her voice, when to call something confusion instead of choice. If I confronted her inside the house, memory would help her. If I confronted her in rage, noise would help her. So I chose the Meridian House parking lot on a Thursday night when she told me she was heading to a museum benefit planning session. Corporate counsel had already frozen my exposure. Her household privileges to anything adjacent to my work life had been cut invisibly. My attorney had prepared separation papers. There was a quiet interview request ready to be delivered by outside investigators within 24 hours. Preston's world was about to become much smaller. I got there early and parked 2 rows back under a low cypress tree that dropped shadows across the windshield. Silicon Valley hotels all looked temporary and expensive at the same time, like money trying not to leave fingerprints. The Meridian House had soft uplighting, valet staff in black, and the kind of lobby where betrayal feels more tasteful until the bill arrives. Janice's car pulled in at 8:11. She stepped out in a pale silk blouse and cream coat, the exact version of polish she wore when she wanted older women to trust her and younger men to follow her with their eyes. Preston's black sedan slid in from the other side of the drive 30 seconds later. He got out smiling, and that was the last easy expression either of them wore. I stepped forward before they reached the entrance. Janice saw me first. Shock is not loud at first. It is silent and physical. Her shoulders locked. Her hand froze halfway to her hair. Preston looked from her to me, read the angle, and did the fast mental math of a coward trying to decide whether charm still had room to operate. "Bob," Janice said. "No, honey. No, what are you doing here?" Just my name, thin and badly said on her tongue. I held up the envelope in my hand. "We're not going inside." Preston tried his smile anyway. "Everything okay?" I looked at him once and understood why he had appealed to her. Men like him are built entirely out of appetite and reflected admiration. They look like momentum until you put consequence in front of them. "No," I said. "But for you it's about to get very clear." Janice stepped toward me, voice low and urgent. "Please don't do this here. That told me everything." Not "don't do this." Not "I'm sorry." Here, she was still trying to manage the setting. "I'm the only reason this is still private," I said. I handed her the envelope first. separation papers, financial restrictions, contact protocols through counsel only. She stared down at the first page and then up at me like she had expected pain, but not administration. Expected tears, but not a process already in motion. You filed. My attorney did what attorneys do when the truth arrives before the liar does. Her face changed then. Not only fear, recognition. She understood that control was already gone. Preston took one small step back. I almost laughed. Then I gave him his envelope. He did not want to take it. Take it, I said. He did. Inside was a notice from corporate counsel, a preservation demand, and contact information for outside investigators. The moment he read the firm letterhead, the color drained from his face. Janice saw that too. That was the surprise she had not planned for. Affairs survive on fantasy. They die in legal fonts. Bob, she whispered, I never meant. No, I said. You just kept meaning the next thing. Her eyes filled. Real tears this time, or good enough that the distinction no longer mattered. It wasn't about information. I nodded once. Then you should have no trouble explaining why he traded around it. Preston opened his mouth. Shut it. Looked toward the valet stand, as if strangers in black jackets might save him from facts. Janice turned toward him, and for the first time I saw it, the humiliation. Not that I knew, that he was already shrinking. She had built a second life around a man who could not even stand upright inside consequence. How much did you tell him? I asked her. She shook her head too quickly. Nothing direct. Nothing like that, but enough. She said nothing. The parking lot was quiet except for a distant engine idle and the soft hiss of the hotel fountain. People think marriage ends in noise. Mine ended in a woman failing to deny the word enough. Did you love him? I asked. It was not the most important question anymore. That is why I asked it. Janice closed her eyes. That was answer enough. Preston finally tried to recover himself. You're making this bigger than it is. I looked at him and almost felt sorry for how little he understood the size of the room he had wandered into. No, I said. You did that when you started billing your ambition through my marriage. That landed. On him because he understood money. On her because she understood humiliation. Janice reached for my arm. I stepped back before she touched me. Please, she said. Let's go home and talk. Home. The word almost offended me. There isn't a home in this anymore, I said. There's only what the paperwork allows. She began to cry fully then, shoulders folding, composure breaking in visible pieces. I felt nothing theatrical. No triumph. No rage. Just a cold sadness settling into its final shape. I would have forgiven the truth sooner than the performance, I told her. That's what you never understood. Preston was still holding the envelope like it might burn through his hands. Good. Let it. I looked at them both one last time and saw the whole thing clearly at last. Not romance. Not some grand passion that outgrew a marriage. Just vanity, access, and two weak people feeding each other versions of themselves they wanted to believe. Then I turned and walked back to my car. Janice called my name once. I did not stop. She called again, softer. I kept walking. The fallout was exactly as ugly as professionals predicted, and almost quieter than ordinary people would believe. Janice lost the marriage first, then the illusion that she could talk her way into some gentler version of the facts. She hired counsel, sat for interviews, gave statements through lawyers. No criminal charges were brought against her in the end, but that outcome did not feel like innocence. It felt like surviving the blast radius with enough reputation left to keep breathing. Preston fared worse. His little capital network world collapsed almost immediately. Investors hate many things, but they especially hate learning that the man selling them access cannot even distinguish pillow talk from evidentiary material. He vanished from public panels within a month, then from the Valley circuit almost entirely. Janice wrote me twice by hand. The first letter tried to explain. The second tried to remember. I answered neither. Calm acceptance is not forgiveness. It is just the point where you stop volunteering your blood to a wound that has already chosen not to close. I moved into a rental in Los Altos for a year and learned what silence sounded like when it belonged to no one else. I went to work. I did what CIOs do in the wake of exposure. Hardened systems, narrow trust, eliminate assumptions. At home, I cooked simple food, ran early, and let my life become smaller in ways that made it cleaner. I did not reconcile. I did not circle back. I did not go looking for some final cinematic conversation in which Janice would suddenly become the version of herself I had married. That woman, if she had ever existed, had long ago given way to somebody who could not say no to being wanted. Before I tell you the last part, subscribe to Reddit Ride. Quiet endings still deserve witnesses. Nearly a year later, I was back in the garage of that same rental, resetting a new mesh network after changing providers. The map came up clean. No hidden hotspots, no ghost devices, no second channel pulsing at the edge of the house. Just the architecture I had approved. I stood there longer than I needed to, looking at the little blue circles on the screen, and realized that peace had returned in the most ordinary way possible. Not as joy, not as revenge, as clarity. The system held. The walls did not lie. Nothing in my life was routing through somebody else's secret anymore. That was enough. The network was honest again,